Welcome to the GMAT Strategy Podcast. You're here because you believe there's a better way to study for the GMAT, and so do we. We created the GMAT strategy to maximize your results and minimize your effort so you can get to the fun parts about business school and life as quickly as possible. My name is Isaac Puglia, and I've been teaching GMAT classes and tutoring privately for the GMAT for almost a decade, and I've achieved a 99th percentile score on the GMAT and helped thousands of students get into the business schools of their choice. I'm excited to be a part of your MBA journey since we all at TGS think our world can benefit from the best possible business leaders that we can find. If this show is bringing you value, please share it with your friends and family who are studying so that together we can make this process as easy and as painless as it can possibly be. Let's go. Welcome to our brand new series on GMAT Math Basics. If you're struggling with quant and/or you're just getting started, I'm hopeful that this will make a huge difference in accelerating your progress. And if you've been studying for a while, hopefully this will be a great refresher and a great way to validate that you've got your basics down. The first step in mastering GMAT Quant is mastering GMAT Math Basics. And the first step in mastering GMAT Math Basics is an understanding of just a few definitions. It's kind of like relearning a language that you used to speak all the time. As a young person, you were probably fluent with a lot of these math basics because you were doing math that's similar to the GMAT fairly consistently. But you probably don't speak that language too much as an adult, and that is part of the reason we're bringing you this episode. Now, an important caveat is I'm not going to cover every definition that you need for a top GMAT Quant score because that's going to be counterproductive. Instead, we're just going to build up from nothing, and we will cover more advanced definitions later when we have created the context so that those basic definitions make sense. And I promise by the time we are through together with this project, you will understand why we did it that way and hopefully appreciate that that was the most efficient way to do things. So just going to ask for a little bit of trust at the beginning with that. Now, what I'm going to do is present this information as a series of questions so that you can pause and quiz yourself if you want to. And that way, this can become sort of like your audio or digital flashcard set if you're on the go and you're not in a situation where you can be looking at physical flashcards safely or efficiently. And I'm definitely going to invite you to make some guesses about the answer to those questions before I give the answers. This testing yourself as you learn or testing as a learning tool is very, very helpful for the learning process. And we've gone deep on that in the past, and I'm sure we'll go deep on it again in the future. In an effort to make this program of study about GMAT Math Basics as effective and useful as possible for everyone, we are going to add in some quizzes at the beginning of each episode that are going to, for the most part, cover the main topics that we are going to discuss in the rest of the lesson. This way, you can flip through the entire course as often as you want, just listening to the beginning of each episode and using that as a test to see if you recall everything that you've learned in the program. This can be almost like a digital flashcard set that you can use to test yourself on and make sure that you're building knowledge, not just exposing yourself to knowledge over time, even if you're on the go. So let's start that for lesson 1 right now. The questions that we're going to answer today are, number 1, what is a number? If I asked you to define what a number is, what would you say? Second question, what is the sign of a number? What does it mean when I ask you to tell me the sign of a number? Question 3, how would you define a negative number? Question 4, how would you define a positive number? Question 5, what is an integer? Question 6, what is a place value? Question 7, what is a digit? And finally, what does it mean if you're looking for a 3-digit number or a 5-digit number? What does that mean? As always, we're open to your feedback about how useful this kind of thing is. Let's get right into the lesson. With all that being said, let's dive right into the key definitions that you'll want to form a absolutely bulletproof, amazing, efficient foundation for the GMAT Quant score of your dreams. Question number 1. What is a number? A number is any value. Any numerical form of value is a number. So 3.879 is a number. 7 divided by 4 is a number. 1 is a number. And believe it or not, 0 is also considered a number. Let's briefly dive into 0. What is 0? 0 represents the value of nothing. Nothing has a value. And it's important to be able to represent that value in business. For example, if I have 5 apples in a basket and I take all 5 of them out, how many apples remain in the basket? It's very helpful, very valuable to have a number that represents that value of nothing. There are 0 apples in the basket. Next, what is a positive number? A positive number is greater than 0. Any number greater than 0 is positive. 0.00000001 is a very small number, but it is positive. 10 is positive. 100 is positive. They're all greater than 0. What is a negative number? A negative number is less than 0. It's kind of a weird concept if you think about it, but it's also very useful in business, especially finance. A good analogy for negative numbers is probably an overdrawn bank balance. There's not really such a thing as negative apples in a basket. We could kind of like extrapolate that if we wanted to, but if you had $100 in your bank account, it's probably easier to think about your bank allowing you to spend $200, which would make your account balance negative 100. That means you owe the bank $100. This is often how we express debt or a value of a security being less than nothing. That's negative numbers. Important and related to positive and negative numbers is the sign of a number. What is the sign of a number? The sign of a number just represents whether it is positive or negative. A number with a positive sign is positive. A number with a negative sign is negative. And the GMAT sometimes uses that word sign to indicate what you're supposed to do in a problem or given information that's crucial to solving a problem. Some people refer to negative numbers as -2, while others refer to them as -2. It's the same value. -2 and -2 have the same value, which is 2 less than 0. Now that you understand what numbers are and the types of numbers, let's talk about another type of number that's very important for the GMAT. What is an integer? An integer is any number that can be expressed without decimals or fractions. If a number does not need a decimal or fraction to be expressed, it is an integer. So if the test says integer, it means no decimals and no fractions allowed. Now we'll get to decimals and fractions later, but in order to truly understand what a fraction and decimal is, I believe you should understand what operations are. And I don't want to get into operations until we've clearly defined what numbers are. Numbers are the thing that you use when you do operations. Or you could think about, what do I operate on? I operate on numbers. Now, most of you are loosely familiar with decimals and fractions to the extent that we can still make this a productive conversation. But if you have no idea what a decimal or fraction is and you've never encountered it, please shoot us a DM at the GMAT strategy on current social channels, and we will edit this episode if we are indeed incorrect in our assumption there. But don't worry, we're going to go deep on decimals and fractions, but not too deep. And that's a really important reason that we're making this episode for you right now, is to make sure that you have the most efficient path forward. And we believe that that is what we're going to give you in this Math Basics course. So back to integers. Integers are numbers that can be expressed without decimals or fractions. -1 is an integer. Now, this is important. I can express -1 as a decimal or a fraction. Like I could express it as the decimal -1.0000000. I could do that, but I don't have to do that. And that's what makes it an integer. Same thing with a fraction. I could express -1 as -3 divided by 3. We'll get into division next time because division is an operation. -3 divided by 3 equals -1, but I don't need to express -1 as -3 divided by 3. Therefore, -1 is an integer. So just think like no decimals, no fractions, even if it could be expressed as a decimal or a fraction. So for example, or a counterexample, maybe 4 divided by 7 is not an integer. There are no ways that I can express the value of 4 divided by 7 without a decimal or a fraction. I must have a decimal or a fraction to express that number, aka value, and therefore it is not an integer. Couple other interesting integers. 0. 0 is an integer because it does not require a decimal or fraction to be expressed. Similarly, 1 billion is an integer, happens to be one of my personal favorites. 2.2 is not an integer because I cannot express the value of 2.2 without a decimal or without a fraction. Next up, what is place value? A place value represents how many ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, etc. are in any given number. The ones place tells you how many ones there are in that number. In the number 107, there are 7 ones. So if you want to write out 107, you would first write a 1, then a 0, then a 7, which indicates that there are 7 ones. Relatedly, in 107, there are 0 tens in that number. And so we write 107 to indicate there's 100, 0 tens, and 7 ones to create the number 107. The number 157 has 5 tens. That's why there's a 5 in the tens place. I already mentioned this, but let's dive into it. In 107, there is 100. So you write that number as 107 with 1 in what's called the hundreds place, 0 in what's called the tens place, and 7 in what's called the ones place. Most of you are going to be okay with larger numbers if we just extend that concept, such as the thousands place, or the 10,000s place, or the 100,000s or millions place. In the number 1 million, there is 1 million, 0 100,000s, 0 100,000s, 0 10,000s, 0 thousands, 0 hundreds, 0 tens, and 0 ones. That's why you write a 1 with 6 zeros after it to express the value, aka the number 1 million. Once you understand place values, you can understand what a digit is. So what is a digit? A digit holds a place value. The tens place is also called the tens digit. In the number 157, there are 5 tens. So 5 is in what's called the tens place. We can also say that 5 is the tens digit of that number. It's the same thing. A digit just holds a place value. All digits have the same name as their place values. The hundreds digit holds the hundreds place value. The thousands digit holds the thousands value, etc. And the only important note there is that the ones digit, which holds the ones place, is usually referred to as the units digit on the GMAT. You could still call it the ones digit. The GMAT tends to refer to it as the units digit. So that naturally leads us to our next question, which is, what is the units digit? And hopefully you know that that's the same as the ones digit. All other place values and all other digits are just going to be called whatever place value they hold on the GMAT. So the thousands place value and the thousands digit will just be called that, the thousands digit. The ones digit is really the only caveat. Last question and last concept here. What does it mean if you're looking for a 3-digit number? You're looking for a number that has 3 place values, exactly 3. This could be 100, which is the smallest 3-digit number, has exactly 3 digits. 99 has only 2 digits. Or it could be a number like 107 or 157, all the way up to the largest three-digit number, which is 999. After that, we get to 1,000, which has four digits. So this is important because the GMAT does like to ask you questions about digits and place values and certain types of numbers that have certain types of digits, such as X is a seven-digit number, something like that. You'll want to know those basic definitions in order to be able to tackle a question like that efficiently. Now, believe it or not, those are all the basic building blocks of GMAT math. Hopefully, that's way simpler than you thought it was going to be. And there are a lot of people out there who have a vested interest in making it seem more complicated than it is, but we do not have that interest. We have your interest at heart, and we want you to be as efficient as possible. That's the whole point of us putting this stuff out. You're very important to the future of business leadership. We take your commitment to this process very seriously, and so we take our commitment to your success very seriously. So what we're doing is just doing our best to create some clarity here, cut through some of the noise. And next time, like I said, we'll be back with operations, which are all the cool things that you can do with numbers. Now, a couple interesting points as we round this out. The GMAT doesn't really test advanced math concepts. Like there's no calculus, there's no trigonometry on the GMAT, but it does test basic concepts in advanced ways. And if you've been studying for a while, you might have experienced some of the tricks and traps and complicated logic that can be involved, even if the math in a specific GMAT problem is relatively simple or straightforward. So having a strong understanding of these basics is going to be immensely valuable. I definitely recommend creating flashcards for all of these concepts, especially the ones that you're not 100% confident with. If you have had success with that in the past, like I said, this episode you can come back and re-listen to over and over again if you want a sort of like digital automated flashcard set. And that's why we've organized the episode in this way. And we'll do our best to continue to build on top of that in a logical progression so that by the time we're through with this, you'll be able to have a study sheet, whether that's mentally, audio, digital, physical, if you create that. And I strongly recommend creating physical flashcards of your own or digital flashcards of your own, because that's very helpful for the learning process. And that way you'll have a nice stack of basic GMAT math knowledge. So again, next time we'll dive into things like fractions, decimals, primes, etc., which are valuable definitions, but are closely connected to operations. And so I'd like to cover operations before we dive into those today. And I look forward to it. As always, my greatest hope is that this material will make your studies as easy and as painless as they can possibly be. If you'd like more tips and strategies for optimizing your performance on the GMAT, please head to our website, thegmatstrategy.com, which is linked in the description of this episode, and check out our video presentation on how to achieve your dream GMAT score in half the normal time. You can just go ahead and check the description of this pod, click on that, and it'll take you right where you want to go. In the meantime, this is a weekly show, so please subscribe, and as always, please stay positive and stay consistent with your studies. Talk to you all soon.